This morning, some storms came through up here in Food by the Word Country. So today on well, I just kind of had a question for you. Now, when storms come through here, you know, you know, watch the weather. You know, storms gonna come through, lightning, thunder, the whole bit, right? Our old dog, well, he's not that old, but he's 7 years old. He goes crazy. He loses his mind. He cannot take the thunder and the light. It just his nerves get shot. His nerves get shot, and really don't know why. Just the older he gets, the more he just cannot take it. He's doing fine, does great, and then if there's like a hint of thunder, just a little rumble, just a little bit, just a little, just a little rumble, just a little bit. He starts to whimpering, and his nerves just start getting shot, and then more it increases, the more he just goes crazy. He goes crazy. He just can't take it. He cannot take the storms. He cannot take the storms. He cannot take the thunder. He cannot take the 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 wind. If it's banging real good, he can't take it. He can't take it. And it got me to thinking. It got me to thinking. There's a lot of you. There's a lot of you out there. There's a lot of you out there that can't take the storms. So the damn well conversation today is, can you handle the storms that you know are coming? That's the whole thing. Now he's a dog, and the reality of it is he doesn't watch the weather like we do. So I know he doesn't know that storms are coming. But he's a dog. He's not a people. He's not a person. He's not a human. But a lot of humans, we know the storms are coming. The older we are, the more we know the storms are coming. But we freak out. Some of us do. I mean, I don't freak out, but I know some people who freak out when the storms come. When the storms come, and I know people who don't freak out when the storms come. It's kind of interesting. We have a kind of a way of handling the storms, around these parts. When we know the storms are coming, we get, hyper vigilant. We get, aware. We get, tuned in, and we can, we get on alert. And we move accordingly as best we can. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people are always surprised by the storms that come up in their lives. And that's a very, I'm no therapist. I'm not here to diagnose and tell people, today I'm well. Our conversation is just, really about just making people aware that this is a thing. There are a lot of people who cannot handle the storms. If you're one of those people, definitely probably seek out some professional help. But the reality about it is especially as we're developing things, especially in this new world, everything's changing and shifting on such a continuous basis, that the ability to handle the storms that we know are coming, that we know are coming, that we know are coming on a yearly basis, certain times a year when the storms really come, we know they're coming. you know are we prepared for them? Sometimes we're not prepared for them. Sometimes you wake up and the lights are off. Sometimes dead in the morning. It's like, oh wow. And trust me, now here's the kicker though. Now when it comes to our dog, he don't care what time it is. You know what I'm saying? He starts going off. And so the reality about it is are you prepared for the storms though? Do you know that storms are going to come? I'm telling you, storms are going to come. As long as you keep living, storms are going to come. Literally and figuratively. Storms are going to come. It's going to get rough at times. Sometimes storms last long. Sometimes storms just blow through. But here's the thing: how you handle the storm is more important probably than anything. How you weather the storm. The storms that will come. Think about, like, in business, a lot of people operate business on a a hope and wish that nothing ever goes wrong. I'm sorry, that's not reality. Guarantee you things are going to go wrong. I guarantee you somebody's going to, if you make food, somebody's going to bite something that they didn't want to bite sometime eventually. The more, the more food you make and the more food you prepare, the longer you do it, the more, chances are increased that something's going to, not taste well one day, not go well one day. If you drive, you're going to get flat tires. I'm going to tell you, when I would go back and forth, to Indianapolis every day, I was going through the tires. And there was a period of time for some reason. I mean, I was catching screws, nails, everything. Between in the 200-mile round trip, I'm catching everything. But I was going through the tires. For real, for real. And I had to know that. I had to realize that, that's the cost of doing business. That's the cost of, these journeys that I'm on. And so taking those things into account, it's going to happen. Are you prepared to weather the storms? Internally, you can't plan everything out here, and have all the ducks in a row to weather every storm, have all the gear and all the, prepare as much as you can, but you can't prepare enough for, because you don't know how the storm's going to come. God don't, he don't tell you how he gonna roll the storms out on, all you know is that they're gonna happen. You don't know how they're gonna happen, if they're strong, they're gonna have hail in them, or just be winds, there's gonna be lightning, it's gonna be thunder. What's it gonna do? It's gonna be straight line winds, it's gonna be, heavy rain, torrential rains, what's it gonna be? You just know that storms are gonna come, and you prepare on a daily basis, prepare internally, pray, seek God, pray internally, exercise, eat right, prepare, consistently on a regular basis, relationships, protect them, show up for them, be the person that you want to receive, these sorts of things, this is preparing for the storm. So when the storms occur, now you can just get into bracing and preparing and weathering the storm, as opposed to freaking out and going crazy and whimpering all over the place and falling out, like our dog does, going through the motions. It's like oh my goodness, like come on, man, God bless him, here's the thing though, here's the kicker. He's not a sensitive dog though. He go out and run the countrysides and go into go into the wild and everything and come out a champion. He bark, he hold it down. He don't let nobody close to nothing and everything else. But let the storms come. And he get to whimpering and wailing. Oh my goodness. He's like, turns into a puppy, But that's how a lot of folks are. That's how a lot of you are. So I just wanted to, today on Well, let's have the conversation. Can you weather the storms? I mean, how do you fare in the storms? I'd love to hear it. Put it in the comments. Tell me how you handle the storms. Tell me how to handle storms. Let's have a conversation. There's a lot of ways of handling the storms. And here's the thing. I'm not saying you're wrong. The reality of it is everybody's different. And so, how do you weather the storms? Do you hunker down in place? Do you thrive? Do you rise to the occasion? So let's have a conversation. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get these numbers up. Let's join us here on Well, and I look forward to talking to you again. God bless you.